The following evening, Sarah wasn't alone. She'd invited her friend Rachel to stay with her, hoping that the presence of another person would keep the terror at bay. Rachel, skeptical but supportive, had agreed to stay over. They'd spent most of the evening talking, trying to distract themselves from the growing unease that hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. But as night fell, the fog rolled in once again, thick and suffocating, covering the street in a blanket of white. Sarah's hands trembled as she stared out of the living room window, the shadows stretching long and airy beneath the dim streetlight outside. Every car that passed made her flinch. Every noise outside made her pulse race. Rachel, sensing Sarah's growing panic, suggested they take a walk to clear their heads. "You're overthinking it. We'll be fine. It's probably just a prank," she said, though even she didn't sound convinced. Reluctantly, Sarah agreed. They left the house and walked down the quiet street, the fog swallowing them whole with every step. They didn't speak much, both of them feeling the weight of the silence, broken only by the distant hum of the occasional passing car. As they reached the end of the street, Sarah froze. A figure was standing there again, just ahead of them, in the thick fog. At first, she thought it was a trick of the mist, perhaps just a shadow cast by a streetlight. But no, as they drew closer, she could make out the unmistakable shape of a man, tall and gaunt, his face hidden in the shadows of his hood. "Is that him?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. Rachel squinted, her breath caught in her throat. "It can't be." But before either of them could react, the man turned slowly, his face emerging from the shadows, and there were no eyes, just empty, hollow sockets where they should have been. His lips twisted into a thin, mocking smile, stretching wider than any human face could. Without a word, the figure began walking toward them, his steps unnaturally smooth, as though gliding on the fog itself. Sarah and Rachel backed away, their hearts hammering in their chest. "Run!" Sarah shouted. They turned and sprinted down the street, the sound of their pounding feet muffled by the fog. But when they reached the end of the block, there was no sign of the man. He had vanished again, just like last night. Panting and terrified, they stumbled into the safety of Sarah's house. The door slammed behind them, and Sarah locked it immediately, her hands shaking. Rachel stood there, breathless, staring wide-eyed at the door as though expecting it to burst open at any moment. "What the hell was that?" she gasped. Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. She knew what it was. The same thing had followed her last night, and it was getting closer. As the minutes ticked by, the two of them sat in the dark living room, the silence pressing in like a weight. That was when they heard it, a knock at the door. Slow, deliberate,